Get out of town. Texas Democrats leave the state to stop Republicans from taking a red pen to the congressional map. Plus, a plan to end the Israel-Hamas war. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff hints at a new strategy to bring peace. And the GOP has a new VIP. You might be surprised when I tell you which A-list Hollywood starlet is a registered GOP voter. Those stories and more today, Monday, August 4th. I'm Caitlyn Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. A manhunt is on for an illegal migrant accused of trying to ram his vehicle into ICE agents during an operation in Colorado Springs. Jose Mendez Chavez is a Mexican national who's entered the country illegally at least half a dozen times and has a mile-long rap sheet. We're not talking a laundry list of petty crimes. These are convictions for things like child abuse and domestic violence. Authorities say Mendez Chavez was behind the wheel of a vehicle used to try to mow down ICE officers, and when his attempt to run down the agents failed, they say the driver then fled the scene. He wasn't alone. His passenger was nabbed a few hours after the incident, and according to a local TV station, he's currently awaiting deportation proceedings. A federal spokesperson slammed a local anti-ICE activist group, the Colorado Rapid Response Network, that has a history of tipping off migrants ahead of raids like these. They said, quote, "It is despicable that Colorado Rapid Response Network would show up in defense of an alien who has abused children and attempted to injure our officers." And now over to Texas. A President Trump-backed plan by Republican lawmakers in Texas to redraw the congressional map in that state has put Democratic lawmakers on their heels, literally. Several Texas Dems have left the state altogether in an attempt to prevent a vote on this new congressional map. The rare mid-decade redrawing of the map is a move that Republicans hope will give them more seats in the U.S. House of Representatives come the 2026 midterms. Now, Texas's Attorney General had threatened to arrest the Democrats if they left. Legally speaking, it's considered a civil violation not to attend a legislative session, meaning they wouldn't end up in jail. And exactly what impact any of it would have on the passage of the new map is kind of up in the air at the moment. Now, as the rule stands, in order to conduct the business of the Texas House, 100 of the 150 members must be present. There are 62 Democrats in the chamber, and at least 51 have left or are leaving the state. Now, this is the second time in 4 years the Dems have made this move. Back in 2021, they left for Washington, D.C. in a 38-day standoff over a voting rights bill. Republicans were eventually successful in passing that one into law. And now to the latest on President Trump's efforts to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. We've talked a lot recently about the Trump administration's global tariff campaign, and when it comes to this particular conflict, the president is trying to put added pressure on Vladimir Putin through secondary tariffs on Russian trading partners. Trump threatened the likes of China and India with 100% tariffs if those countries continue to do business with Putin. Here's the president last week when asked about India specifically.
Well, I understand India no longer is going to be buying oil from Russia. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's a good step. We'll see what happens.
What happened was the exact opposite. Over the weekend, 2 Indian government officials told Reuters that their country had no plans to sever trade ties with Russia and that they would continue to buy oil from Putin. Now, India already faces a 25% tariff on goods it sends to the United States. That secondary 100% tax would be added onto that. So doing the quick math, India is looking at a 125% tariff rate. Meanwhile, the fighting between Russia and Ukraine continues. Early Sunday morning, debris from a downed Ukrainian drone ignited a major fire at an oil depot near the Russian resort town of Sochi. Ukraine says they intercepted 60 Russian drones and a missile, while 16 drones and 6 missiles from Russia did hit targets across the country in the latest attacks. President Trump's updated deadline for a peace deal is this Friday. Now to our big story, the latest on the Israel-Hamas war and renewed U.S. efforts to end it. Over the weekend, White House Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, met with families of some Israeli hostages still being held by Hamas. And we have some insight into that meeting through a video that Reuters was able to review. And it's shedding some light on where the Trump administration stands on the conflict. Witkoff said, quote, "We have a very, very good plan that we're working on collectively with the Israeli government, with with Prime Minister Netanyahu for the reconstruction of Gaza that effectively means the end of the war. As of Sunday evening, the White House didn't respond to a request for comment on Witkoff's claim there, but the president has said previously that ending the war is a priority despite the fact that previous negotiations have failed. The news of potential developments toward an end to the fighting comes as Hamas released two appalling videos of Eviatar David, a severely malnourished Israeli hostage, digging what he says on the video is his own grave. For more on all this, I'm joined by the Post's deputy managing editor, Michael Zenny. So, Michael, give us a brief overview of where things stand in terms of negotiating an end to this war. What is the backdrop in which Witkoff made these latest statements?
Yeah, hi, Caitlyn. So really what we're seeing is international momentum for a ceasefire has really picked up. And this is because of reports out of Gaza of starvation and possibly famine, really horrific pictures. And you saw last week, even President Trump appeared to be shocked by these images that were coming out of Gaza, right? So, but the answer here is not easy, right? So the big sticking points right now, we're down to sort of the fundamentals. Israel has said it will wipe out Hamas. Hamas cannot continue to exist. And Hamas has said it's not leaving and it's not giving up power. So for this war to end, something is really going to have to give.
I want to go back to something that you mentioned there a second ago. You talked about those horrifying images from last week, but there's one from this week, and it's impossible to look at this video of this emaciated human being, this hostage, and not just feel sickened. So as far as we can tell, how many hostages are still in Hamas custody, and what do we know about those conditions?
Yeah, so there were actually videos of two hostages, and they really, I think, have put this issue back on the front burner for a ton of people. This is something that we have consistently covered and haven't stopped covering since the very beginning. But to answer your questions, as we know, there are 20 living hostages. Nearly all of them are believed to be IDF soldiers. And then there are the bodies of 30 additional hostages, including at least 2 Americans that are still in Hamas hands in Gaza. And as far as the conditions go, they seem to be extremely perilous. Based on our reporting, they appear to be kept in tunnels, underground, under threat of execution. And these videos have really shown an incredibly harsh light on the conditions that these few remaining hostages have.
It's absolutely sickening when you look at it. Now, I want to pivot slightly here. There are a lot of powerful countries that are starting to line up behind Palestine. France, the UK, and now Canada saying that they're prepared to recognize a Palestinian state. So what does that mean for the overall kind of geopolitics of this region? And potentially, what does this mean for the end of the war?
Really giving me the softball questions today, aren't you? So basically, what we're seeing is a widening potential diplomatic rift between the U.S. and many of its other major allies, right? So France and the U.K. and Canada and a slew of other Western nations have said that they are set to recognize the state of Palestine, right? Now, in some ways, this is symbolic, but it's also really a slap at Israel over the enduring, continuing war in Gaza, right? And we've talked for decades about a two-state solution, which is a Palestinian state coexisting alongside an Israeli state. But that was always sort of part of a peace process that would kind of ideally end the ongoing conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. But here, this is like a one-sided recognition. And you're also seeing that Trump is really not happy about this. So he's never really expressed favor for the two-state solution. And he actually suggested that Canada, recognizing Palestine, could actually derail the all-important trade negotiations between the U.S. and its second biggest trading partner.
It's just so multifaceted, the whole conflict. And then when you try to add in the geopolitics of it and how it impacts the rest of the world, it is a lot to unpack. And I thank you so much, Michael Zenny, for doing that for us today.
All right. Thank you.
It's been a minute since the mob family, the Gottis, have made news here at the New York Post. Notorious mafioso John Gotti Sr. and his equally famous mafioso son John Gotti Jr. used to be New York Post mainstays back in the 80s and 90s, but we kind of forgot about the Gambino family crime lords. But now the younger generation is back to the old ways of roughing up those who wrong them. This time, a 60-year-old Queen's grandma is getting the business end of a Gotti fist. Kathy Gabrielli was reportedly trying to break up a fight between two of John Gotti's grandsons, Frankie and John III, and her son Gino, when one of the Gotti brothers ended up punching her. It's not really the Sopranos-style hit of a made man you were picturing there, huh? At any rate, Kathy, she is no snitch. She declined to comment to the Post, but Gino was more than happy to explain. It all boils down to some family drama. John Gotti No. 3 got booted out of his house for cheating on his wife, and he stopped paying rent. So Gino, who's his brother-in-law, went ahead and stole $3,000 for back rent and then busted up part of the Gotti's tattoo parlor for good measure. Actually, now that I'm saying it all out loud, it does kind of sound like something Tony and Christopher would have gotten into. Well, the Gottis were charged with third-degree attempted assault and harassment. They pleaded not guilty and are back in court this week. And finally today, this probably won't help Sydney Sweeney endear herself to those on the left who are already losing their collective mind. Her jeans may be blue, but Sweeney's voting record seems to be red. According to public voter records reviewed by the Post, the Gen Z bombshell has been registered with the Republican Party in Florida since 2024. Now, the revelation comes while the actress is still mired in the backlash from her American Eagle jeans commercials. You know the ones. They got hit with accusations of being Nazi propaganda for the double entendre of good jeans with a G and good jeans with a J. The right quickly came to Sweeney's defense last week when she was raked over the coals. One example, President Trump's own communications director calling the whole thing, quote, cancel culture run amok. You know, Sydney Sweeney's voter status, not something I ever thought I'd discuss. But can we go back to the Gottis clocking a grandma for a second here? I don't know why I can't stop thinking about that story. To find out what happens to them in court, make sure you check out the New York Post in print or online. And I will be right here in your headphones or your speakers tomorrow morning, whether you like it or not. So pretty please do like and subscribe to the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Please and thank you. See you tomorrow.